A Lonely Valentine's Day, written by Father Pie, read by Eighth Flame. I miss you. Sunset sat at her table, a large glass filled with alcohol sat in front of her. Mind swam through memories and feelings of faint kisses brushing against her lips. Dudley, stop it! Sunset weakly protested as her lover's mouth planted soft, delicate kisses along her neck. Adagio glanced up at Sunset's expression. A smirk had grown on her face as she watched Sunset weakly struggle against her. Sunset's head jolted upwards. Sunset blearily shook her alcohol-fuzzed mind back in consciousness. Sighing softly, Sunset stared at her drink, watching as the liquid slowly rocked back and forth from a sudden movement. Feeling her eyelids becoming heavy, Sunset rested her head on her arms and fell back into unconsciousness. Sunset was walking down a snowy street, her hand holding the hand of her recent lover. Adagio with sorry, I was getting interrupted by a text. Um, Adagio, for her part, was smiling broadly as she talked about some of her adventures in the human world. Sunset nodding every now and again, clearly enjoying the presence of Adagio. Sunset turned her head and watched Adagio and animatedly move her hands as she was busy explaining to her how a typewriter worked. Sunset smiled softly as she watched her lover continue to talk. Sunset was once again awoke much to her annoyance. Sighing, she grabbed her glass of alcohol and downed half of it one go. Sunset sighed contentedly as the drink felt warm in her stomach. Sunset turned and looked at her clock, 4 o'clock p.m. Shaking her head, Sunset felt around her table. Finding her phone, she entered her password and began to check for any new messages. Sunset sighed in annoyance as soon as she saw that she had received 8 messages asking if she was okay. Taking time to reply to each one, ensuring that she was fine. Once again, her mind began to wander. Sunset fell onto her bed as she bounced. She giggled softly. Adagio crawled over Sunset, their mouths inches apart. Instead of kissing, Adagio began over Sunset's body. Sunset stared to breathe even unevenly as her excitement began to build. Adagio started to undo her shirt. As she undid Sunset's shirt, she lowered her head and whispered into Sunset's ear. Oh wow. I can't for this to. Wait. I can't for um. I can't for this. Tonight you'll be under my spell. Adagio softly sang into her ear. Sunset had lost herself in a fond memory that she had shared with her special love. Shaking her head, Sunset scowled, grabbing her drink. She downed the rest of it. When Sunset, excuse me, when Sunset didn't feel any more liquid entering her mouth, she growled angrily. Reaching under her table, she grabbed a fresh bottle of booze and started to drink it greedily. Once that too was finished, she grabbed another. As she brought it to her mouth, something stopped her from downing it. Sunset brought the drink in front of her eyes and wistfully recalled what it was like to drink with someone important. Adagio had brought Sunset to a cheap-looking bar for their 1 year anniversary. Frowning, she turned and questioningly glanced at Adagio. Adagio simply smiled and shrugged her shoulders and walked inside, sighing. Sunset followed her in. Once inside, Sunset's jaw hit the floor. The bar was covered in expensive-looking furniture, and across was a cordoned off whatever off room full of tables and couples eating dinner. Adagio called Sunset over to her. Oh wow, this really looks fancy. Oh my. She was standing in front of a small podium with a man checking a list. As she neared, the man nodded to Adagio and led her past the rope that separated restaurant and bar. The man behind the podium simply lifted the rope off its hook and let her pass. I want I wonder why you were so dressed up for going to a bar, Dodgy. If you told me If we were going to eat at a nice restaurant, I would dress more appropriately. Sunset trailed off as Adagio grabbed her hand. You look beautiful, my love. You look like a diamond. So, what do you want to eat? Adagio asked as she picked up her menu and began to scan for something that looked appetizing. Sunset watched Adagio. Something seemed off about the egg siren. She seemed fidgety. What Sunset didn't notice, however, was the small box Adagio had put back into her purse. Small box, huh? Sunset's mind had been slipping into memories that she didn't feel like reliving. This evening was proving to be pretty troublesome. Scratching that, this day in general was terrible. Sunset looked at the drink in her hand. Sunset frowned. Drinking this much wasn't a good idea, but by this point she didn't care. Downing the whole bottle in one go, Sunset felt better again. She felt so good that she decided she should invite Adagio over. As Sunset reached for her phone, her world came crashing down around her. She couldn't call Adagio. Adagio had decided that they would go on a romantic walk that evening. After all, it was Valentine's Day. The girls had dressed for the relatively warm day. Snow fell from the night sky and reflected the light in a beautiful display for all who went out that evening. The park was quiet, except for the laughs and chatter from the lonely couple. Both were unaware of the third wheel. Sunset, Sunset, I love you so much. You've helped me so much, and I want to ask you a question. Adagio trembled as she worked up her courage to ask Sunset to marry her. Sunset, for her part, was shaking with excitement. Could this be the moment she was waiting for? Oh my gosh. I know where this is going. I'm getting the feels already. I'm starting to tear up a little. Her question was confirmed when Adagio dropped to her knee and pulled out a small jewelry box. Inside sat a golden ring with a small red ruby. Sunset shimmer. Will you marry me? Adagio was cut off as a man interrupted her question. Hands up! I hope. What? Am I reading this correctly? Hands up! I hope you two will forgive my interruption. Adagio and Sunset immediately threw their hands into the air. The man wore a ski mask and was pointing a gun at them. What the fuck? Alright, I want this to go smoothly, okay? The stocky man spoke clearly. Both the girls nodded. The man approached them and with his free hand began to search the son of a bitch. It's a fucking robber. God damn. Purses. With the man preoccupied going through their purses, Adagio began to slowly move around him. Sunset stared at Adagio, shaking her head back and forth, silently pleading for Adagio to stop her plan. Hey, where did that girl of yours wander off to? The man shouted as her checked behind Sunset. Adagio swung her hand as hard as she could. Her fist connected with the side of the culprit's head. The man's finger flexibly pulled the trigger of pistol. The bullet passed right through Sunset's leg. Sunset fell to the ground, screaming in pain as her hands instinctively grabbed the wound. Adagio began to beat down on the man savagely. As Sunset lay on the ground, her vision had blurred from the pain, but she could hear the struggle as the man tried to defend himself from Adagio. It sounded as if she was winning. Then a loud bang resounded around the park. The park fell deathly still. Sunset's vision cleared as adrenaline rushed through her body. Sunset's eyes found Adagio standing still. Her hands were shaking softly, and her eyes wide from shock. Her coat had turned noticeably red. Adagio's face conveyed a shocked expression as she fell to the ground. Sunset's eyes widened in horror. How could this day have gone so wrong? The man pulled himself to his feet and was muttering to himself. Sunset, Sunset stared at him, feeling for her hatred to kill the man on the spot. Sunset felt her eyes began to water. She once again grabbed another bottle and slowly drank this one. As she lived repressed memories